Mr. Ziv Ragowsky is an MBA from INSET. He is a consultant in field of sustainability and an agricultural technology enthusiast. Some of his works, consultant in McKinsey & Co., CEO in Maha Microfinance for Agriculture, Myanmar, board member of Blue Number, and focus with Government of Indonesia, Bapenas, on agricultural innovation in palm oil, and also working with various organizations on sustainability. He will be presenting the concept of global framework of principles for sustainable palm oil and the next plan. Mr. Ziv, you have 20 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, all distinguished gentlemen and ladies, in particular, Dr. Yusuf Basirun, Ibu Mustalifa, and others as well, for attending today's session. Let me share my screen and share with you a bit of the content of the global framework. So the global framework principles for palm oil sustainability was originated with CPOPC, and I want to thank also for the great collaboration with Pak Dupito, Pak Wicak, Ibu Mala and team as well for creating this document. The reason essentially to us starting in this effort, as was mentioned before by the distinguished speakers before me, is the fact that global demand for vegetable oils is continuing to grow. And as we know very well in this meeting, it is very much of an imperative that palm oil continues to be the leading form of vegetable oil, as it is the most productive. As such, the idea is that, as also was mentioned by Ibu Mustalifa and others, and Dr. Yusuf Basirun, is the fact that unfortunately at times palm oil is being specifically under attack by different kinds of stakeholders. And so it is important to have the right level of discussion that is both backed by the right set of principles and by the right set of data in order to have this discussion going forward. The importance of palm oil for developing countries specifically cannot be understated. It is a significant economic prime mover that supports agribusiness. It allows for a significant growth of jobs and generates a great deal of national revenues. One of the key elements for palm oil that makes it so, compared to other agricultural products as well, is, as we know, palm oil requires processing specifically within country. And that processing specifically within country is some of the key elements that drive economic development for developing countries such as Malaysia, Indonesia, Colombia, Honduras, and other countries that are engaging in the growth of palm oil. Often when we speak with the processing companies in these various countries, what they feel is, when we actually discuss their commitment to national development, is that often their contributions in terms of infrastructure, whether it's roads or hospitals or schools, are not being evaluated as part of the contribution of the industry. And that is an important element to remember and know. What we also know is, for palm oil specifically, even more so than some of the other vegetable oils, there are significant and robust certification schemes. So MSPO, ISPO, RSPO, ISCC, and others are all looking to provide a framework in order to certify and ensure that palm oil is sustainable. What is missing at times from the discourse is the common language across these elements, not as a way of replacing them, but as a way to ensure that whether we are discussing on MSPO, ISPO, RSPO, we are able to have a common language. This should form the basis to a discussion beyond palm oil as well, as we will see later. In addition, what is important when we create this common language is to focus on both, as we heard earlier, on the environmental sustainability, as well as the social sustainability, as well as the benefits that palm oil provides. Therefore, the GFP SPO is used to provide a common language across these systems, and specifically highlighting the importance of palm oil as a driver of the national development that we've seen before, and as a way to provide better calorie intake of vegetable oils across the world. To this end, as the second framework, in addition to the certification scheme that was then used as a basis for the GFP SPO, is, as was mentioned earlier, the Global Goals for Sustainable Development. The importance of these goals is that it is already, or they are already a common language, and they allow us to expand the conversation across certification scheme to something that, as we mentioned earlier as well, the United Nations understands, and we can have a positive discussion across various countries, across various types of vegetable oils, and as an ability to drive the industry plus sustainability forward. The idea that from CPOPC's perspective, palm oil should be at the forefront of this discussion, as we mentioned earlier as well, in achieving these SDGs. And as such, the idea that it can form a basis for all types of vegetable oils to engage with the SDGs and to evaluate and improve ways by which we can drive towards the SDGs to achieve in an even better way. As such, when we looked at creating these principles, the ideas, there are a set of things that CPOPC as guided, plus as we receive guidance from various different other stakeholders as well, in order to make sure that this global framework on sustainability is robust. Firstly, it is the idea that we want to look forward, not as a new certification scheme, but as a common language, but we all can talk better together. Secondly, the idea of establishing a set of common denominators across all certification schemes to, again, make them stronger and connect those to each other. Thirdly, focusing on the idea of a productive partnership and not discriminating against palm oil only. The idea that if we can all work together towards better sustainable outcome, it will benefit everybody, and palm oil ultimately can emerge as the right driver of development that is necessary for it to be. Then we look for identification of actionable ways in which the whole industry and producers and consumers can improve productive sustainability. As we will see a bit later, oftentimes the burden of sustainability unfortunately falls on the producers, where the consumers at times achieve much higher element of the profit from the industry itself. And that creates a situation where it is very difficult for the producer countries, and specifically a lot of the producer stakeholders, such as smallholder farmers, to become more sustainable. And this is part of the actionable ways that we need to develop to help them achieve those. Then ensuring that opportunities for improvement are identified. So then we're able to create the right mechanisms and systems and plans and do the work to actually achieve the goals that we want. And at the end of all of it, we are wrapping this as a set of, these are the principles and approaches. There are no actions being created based on this initial document. The idea is to provide a discussion point for us to discuss as countries producing palm oil, to us to discuss with our stakeholders, to us to discuss with the United Nations as a way to move forward. The idea, again, is to create a very positive discourse that avoids a lot of the difficulties and friction of pitting one stakeholder against another. So what is these principles? As Ibu Mustalifa kindly mentioned earlier, there are 7 of them, and these are the 7. One is developing partnership for sustainable development through transparency and collaboration that include other vegetable oils. This is important, as often the producers of palm oil feel a bit victimized by the idea that palm oil is seen as the source of all evil as such, even though as Dr. Yusuf Basir mentioned earlier, it is actually a very small amount of the land use is for palm oil. Therefore, the idea of developing the transparency and collaboration becomes important. And furthermore, the idea of actually including this framework as a common language, not only within the palm oil industry, but also beyond across other vegetable oils as well. Secondly, upholding the peace, justice, and strong institutions through compliance with laws and regulations. And the importance here is encouraging and recognizing the sovereignty of the countries that are producing the palm oil as a way to support these institutions, as opposed to creating institutions outside these producing countries to mandate these discussions. Thirdly, investing in innovation and technology to drive the adoption of efficient and best management practices. Throughout the work on this piece, it is clear that as palm oil is in a lot of countries are now being is finishing its cycle, meaning that the 25, 27 years of a tree has come to an end, and therefore there is a need to replant. There is a lot of new technologies that did not exist in the last 27 years that can ensure that the outcome of palm oil is a lot more sustainable, productive, and can deliver a lot more value than it did before. And we need to make sure that we consider these new technologies and approaches to drive the discussion forward. Fourth, minimizing net impact to the environment and ecosystem through efficient use of natural resources, which can better be done with the innovation and technology, but it's important to ensure and emphasize on. 5, benefiting the workers and local communities by improving the living conditions and respecting their rights. This is important on multiple levels. One, as we'll see a bit later, current share of smallholders and local communities in terms of the profit of palm oil is not so significant. And the ability to, on the other hand, support these communities by the building of schools and hospitals and others, such as the producing companies are doing, is quite important. 6, inclusiveness for smallholders and low-income consumers. As we know, it is quite difficult for smallholders to benefit from certification schemes, and we need to think about how we include them into this process, in addition to providing them additional benefit as such. And 7, of course, commitment to continuous improvement, because we know very well that this work just starts today. It doesn't end. Ultimately, we would also like to note that this framework follows the principles that was started by CPOPC in 2015. And again, it builds on an existing amazing knowledge, set of knowledge and work. In addition to the principles that are highlighted in the main document, there has been work also on 9 different annexes that are important. Some of this we will touch on in the next few pages, and others you can, you can go through as well as you go through this document, but are super important as well. The first annex is the comparison of this framework and how it aligns with to existing certification schemes. As was emphasized, and I will emphasize again, the global framework on sustainability does not assume to create a new certification scheme, but in fact, it assumes to gather the best and create the connections across certification scheme towards the definition of this common language. In the next slide, we'll talk about what are some of the principles within the certification schemes and how they fit in comprehensively into the global framework on sustainability certification scheme. The second annex focuses on the SDG deep dive, where we do try to ensure that palm oil can touch in a very positive way on each one of the 17 different SDG goals. And that is important because we believe that palm oil has the ability to do so, and has and in fact is part of the SDG process. And as such, it forms such a core element of this discussion that we wanted to evaluate and show how those pieces connect. Thirdly, we highlight technology, which we'll discuss about a little bit later. But again, with the emphasis that with new technology, both the idea of productivity can go up, and therefore there is a reduction need for for new land to be used for palm oil. And in fact, there have been recent articles around that. And in addition, it is much easier to interface and reward smallholder farmers specifically and others for their investment into sustainability. And some of these technologies did not exist before. We then go into high-level implementation with the idea that we can actually look at using this as a discussion point with the different certification schemes, with different stakeholders. We look at what is the business model that could be used to support this, to ensure that this a system like this, once it's adopted, refined and adopted, can be used in a way that is, again, does not cause an undue burden on the producers, but allows for all stakeholders to join together towards better sustainable outcome. 2, we look at what is the business model that could be used to support this, to ensure that this a system like this, once it's adopted, refined and adopted, can be used in a way that is, again, does not cause an undue burden on the producers, but allows for all stakeholders to join together towards better sustainable outcome. We then start looking at how do we extrapolate this framework into other vegetable oils, with the idea that we should all be following the same rules. We should not be subject to rules that are specific to palm oil, where other vegetable oils might be more lax maybe in their contribution towards the SDGs. An important piece that we wanted to focus on is the idea of engaging with smallholders, as they are often overlooked in the supply chain, and specifically might not be as strong as to engage in the practices that we need them to without help from us, the rest of the stakeholders. As an 8th annex, we are looking at how do we hope to engage with the United Nations, hopefully later this year, with the idea that both because we are looking at SDGs and because we are trying to create the right set of collaborations, it will be important for us to bring this to a global forum and leverage this global level discussion in a way that will let us work together towards, towards additional improvement. And finally, we have created a template for countries looking to create their own national certification schemes as a way to support new member countries into CPOPC and others as they're thinking about palm oil. These 9 annexes are super important as a way to us to continue the discussion beyond the initial set of 7 principles. So I will not go deeply into this. A lot of the content is in the, into the document, but I do want to share a little bit. And again, with the idea that we are super excited and respecting of the various certification schemes. Part of the analysis was to show that we cover all of the principles of the various certification schemes and not add too many new things, but rather create the level of discussion across them. So as you see, all certification schemes are actually touching on at least 6, if not 7 of the different principles in ways that are making this productive and ways that are making this allow us to have the right level of discussion.
Okay, you have another 3 minutes.
Yep, I'm almost done. Thank you. So 2 more pages. So basically, on the technology, it is important to note, as we mentioned earlier, is that we are looking to do 3 different things. One is ensuring the right verification with all stakeholders, therefore engaging with smallholders and allowing them to be part of the sustainability framework. 2, the right remote of engagement and compensation. In a world where today we can both engage with farmers remotely, understand who they are, and also compensate them directly through e-wallets and mobile money, it allows for much better engagement and ensuring that these farmers have their actual benefit. And finally, as we mentioned earlier, the right modern inputs and practices allow for better productivity and therefore reduce land usage. Another thing that we quickly touched on earlier is the idea that as of right now, in terms of a business model, the consumers are actually benefiting from most of the value created by smallholders. In fact, smallholders create 6% of the value chain, but their profits, unfortunately, is normally close to 0. This is why the business model that we are proposing through the annex should better support smallholder farmers. And finally, in summary, the idea is that palm oil should be the first of many in exploring how the SDGs and how such a framework can help benefit the different kind of vegetable oils. And especially since if we can actually use palm oil and take away some of the negative images, as Dr. Yusuf Bashiron mentioned earlier, we would only require an 8% increase of land use versus today. But if we are not able to explain our position well and the market moves towards soybean, it will mean a significant or almost 50% increase in land use. And that is important. Thank you very much for your time and looking forward to the discussion.